Hello and welcome back to another video on the F1 Journal, and we are just 1 week away from the opening round in Austria, and I haven't done my Drivers' Championship predictions, so there's no better time than the present to do them. So I thought, let's do it just on the verge of the season. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. Number 20, Nicholas Latifi. I think this is a person who we're all expecting to finish bottom of the championship this year. I'm still expecting Williams to have the slowest car, even if it is much improved from last year. And with such a good teammate, I can't see Nicholas Latifi beating George Russell, so subsequently I think he'll finish last in the championship. I will be interested to see how Latifi gets on though. Finished second in F2 last season, but I would say it wasn't the strongest field, so I do worry for him slightly. But I do think it will be really interesting to see how he gets on. Number 19, George Russell. A good season for Russell last year, comfortably beating Robert Kubica, his teammate, most of the time in by far the slowest car. Although Robert Kubica did get the only points, which must have been frustrating. However, I do think Russell will pick up points this season at some stage and will comfortably beat teammate Nicholas Latifi as he looks to put forward a case for a Mercedes seat in 2021 should Valtteri Bottas leave the team. In 18th, I think will be Romain Grosjean. I think this will be his last season in F1, to be honest. I've been expecting Haas to get rid of him for the last 2 seasons, but they stuck by him. But I think this season he will just drop that further bit behind and will constantly make mistakes. And I'm not expecting the Haas to be too good either, so I do slightly worry for Grosjean. And he does need a big season with drivers like Hülkenberg who will be wanting that seat next year, but I just can't see him having one. It's a similar story for Antonio Giovinazzi, who I think will come 17th in the championship. A driver who is different ends of a career to Grosjean, but it definitely needs to improve on last season, where he's comfortably beaten by 38 or how old he is, teammate Kimi Raikkonen, which probably isn't good enough, and he definitely needs to beat him comfortably, or at least be solidly level with him if he wants a seat next season, even if Kimi decides to hang up the helmet. 16th, I think, will be Kevin Magnussen. I'm expecting K-Mag to actually have a pretty decent season here and outperform Romain Grosjean, but I'm just expecting there has to be a bit of a dog of a car, to be honest. We've seen the money issues they've had recently, and I can't see their car being too much better than what it was last year, so I can see it being a struggle for him. And if he does have a good season and comfortably outperforms Grosjean, he could be looking for a better seat for the 2021 season. Number 15, Daniil Kvyat. This is a big season for Danny because, let's face it, he's not going to get a Red Bull seat, and Red Bull will be looking to fill the AlphaTauri seat with a young driver. It's someone like Yuri Vips if he has enough super licence points. So if Danny Kvyat wants to earn another seat in F1, where he's likely to be ousted by AlphaTauri, not Toro Rosso at the end of the season, he needs a good season. However, by the end of last season, PIERRE GASLY was comfortably outperforming him, so I think it will be a struggle for him. And yeah, so I can't see Kvyat having too great a season, but he definitely needs one. 14th, Kimi Raikkonen. I've spoken about most of the drivers who I'm predicting to finish below him have important seasons this year. Not for Kimi. If he performs well, then he wants to say he'll get another year at Alfa Romeo. If not, he's 40 years old. He's an F1 world champion. I shouldn't think he's too bothered really. But I'm still predicting him to comfortably outscore Antonio Giovinazzi because I still think he's got some absurd pace for a 40-year-old. And long may it continue. Who doesn't love a bit of Kimi? In 13th, I've gone for Pierre Gasly. I'm expecting Pierre to perform really well this season and have a bit of a redemption season after what happened at Red Bull last year. I still think he's got incredible pace and he's one of the best drivers in the midfield, which is why it's such a shame it didn't work out at Red Bull. But I'm expecting Pierre to perform well this season and definitely put him in with a chance of maybe even getting a Red Bull seat next season. Number 12, Lance Stroll. I'm expecting a kind of gap to form in the midfield this year between Renault, McLaren and Racing Point and the other teams, and I think the gap is here. I've gone for 12th Lance Stroll. I think Racing Point will start off with a really fast car, but they'll just fade towards the end of the season. And to be honest, I don't think Stroll has the pace to be in and around that battle, so I think he'll finish 12th by quite some distance, despite probably having a faster car than the Renaults. In 11th, I've gone for Esteban Ocon. This is going to be a really tough year for Esteban Ocon. He's hardly driven an F1 car in 18 months, and he's got Daniel Ricciardo, a 7-time race winner, as his teammate. Yeah, but I can see him having a tough season to start with, but then just picking up as the season goes along. It's also a big season for Esteban Ocon. I know he's contracted for next season, but if he wants any chance of getting a Mercedes seat, he does need to improve. So a huge season in very difficult circumstances for Ocon, but I can still see him doing pretty well. I think Lando Norris will come in 10th place in the championship. It'll be really interesting to see how Lando does this year. He got really unlucky last year, and I think definitely would have been closer to Carlos Sainz. So hopefully he gets a bit more lucky this year, and we'll see how he really does compare to Carlos Sainz ahead of the challenger Daniel Ricciardo next season. Probably does need a big season, because I really do think it will shape his future, whether next year he'll be equal with Ricciardo or whether he'll be playing second fiddle. And speaking of the man himself, I think Daniel Ricciardo will finish in 9th. I think this will be a really tough year for Danny Rick. I think he's probably got the 6th fastest car, which won't help. A tough teammate, like I've already mentioned, and relations don't seem good with Renault after he's already completed his move to McLaren without a wheel being turned. But I can still see Danny Rick's pace coming to the fore, and him still having a relatively decent season for the car that he's got. Number 8, Sergio Perez. I'm really interested to see how Sergio Perez does this season. It looks like for once Racing Points have provided Perez with a car that could really challenge the likes of Renault and McLaren, and we've never really seen what he's been able to do. And I'm really looking forward to seeing if he can cut it with the likes of Sainz and Ricciardo this year. And do you know what? I think he can. I think Racing Point will have probably the 4th fastest car to begin with, and then fade. So it's really about how he starts the season, and I can see him doing well enough to secure a solid top 10 finish. In 7th, I think it will be soon to be Ferrari man Carlos Sainz. I think he will be top of the midfield again in probably what would eventually become the fastest car in the midfield. Be a huge season for Sainz, as he will be looking to show Ferrari why they chose him. Or will it end up being a mistake for Ferrari and he turns out just to be a one-season wonder and will be paying second fiddle to Charles Leclerc for the long term? So it's still a huge season for Sainz, even though he's got a big move lined up. And the first of the big 6, I'm expecting it to be Alex Albon. I do slightly worry for Albon this season. I just wonder if he's got the pace of the likes of Vettel, Verstappen, Hamilton, Leclerc, Bottas, and if he might let Red Bull down here if they got a really strong car at the start of the season and could cost Red Bull second in the championship. That's just my fear, but I hope I'm proved wrong and he could be matching the pace with them, but I do fear he could be another Pierre Gasly this season. 5th, I think it will be Sebastian Vettel in probably his last F1 season for a while, if not ever. I'm expecting a tough year for Vettel here, probably starting off with the 3rd fastest car, the number 2 driver without a shadow of a doubt, and very little motivation from the videos we've seen, and the fact he's already been ousted from Ferrari and doesn't seem to get a drive. So I think this year's just about pride for him, and he doesn't get absolutely demolished by his teammate Leclerc, but I do fear for him. In 4th, I've gone for Charles Leclerc, but I'm expecting there to be quite a big gap between the 2 Ferrari drivers. I just unfortunately don't think at the beginning of the season Ferrari will quite have the pace which will put Leclerc into a title fight, but I do think he will be solidly ahead of his teammate and keep on building their foundations to perhaps have a title-winning car in 2022 and make the team his own. So even though it might not be a great year on paper for him, I can still see it being a pretty solid building year for Charles. In third, I'm going for Valtteri Bottas. How many times have we sat here on the eve of the season and said how big a season it is for Valtteri Bottas? Well, we're here again, this time just a couple of months later than it would usually be. Bottas's contract is up at the end of the year, and he's probably facing the best successors that we've had to date, with the likes of Russell, Vettel and Ocon on the market. So this is a big year where he definitely needs to back up Lewis Hamilton, if not properly fight him for a World Drivers' title. But I can still unfortunately see him being off the pace, to be honest. The runner-up of the 2020 F1 season, I think, will be Max Verstappen. I can see him and Lewis having a great fight for the opening races around Austria and Hungary, where I'm predicting them to have pretty level cars. But since then, I can just see it fading away for Red Bull, as I don't think they'll have the quickest car along with Mercedes on all of the circuits, and maybe just fading back away. And it does worry me about Albon. Does Verstappen need number 2 to really put a challenge to the man who I think is going to win the World Championship? Lewis Hamilton, I think, will become a 7-time World Champion. Like I said, I think he'll have pretty strong challenge in the opening 3 rounds from Red Bull, but then I can see him just cruising away and probably winning the title quite comfortably again. Yeah, he's just too good, really, isn't he? And he fully deserves the world title, and I'm expecting him to do it. But anyway, guys, that rounds off this video. Thank you very much for watching. Remember to like, share, subscribe. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. Make sure you follow me on Twitter for F1 news. Subscribe to my other channels on screen right now. That'd be greatly appreciated. Thanks for watching. Peace.